I'm Parky. That's what people call me. And I'm a researcher here at Oxford in an organisation called Earthwatch, which is an environmental charity which does a variety of environmental research, but all around the theme of citizen science. And I work on a number of EU research projects at the moment, in particular one called MIX, which is around measuring the impact of citizen science. But today, in today's session, I'll be presenting first a quick introduction of citizen science, and then some of the lessons and experiences learned from a previous Earthwatch project called CoCoast, which was a kind of marine citizen science project. But yeah, to start with, because this session will kind of focus generally on citizen science and its potential contributions to marine science, we didn't want to kind of assume knowledge on the part of the audience. So I'll give a very light introduction to the state of citizen science in Europe. But I also know that some people in the audience are already absolutely expert in citizen science. So I ask you to kind of bear with me for the next few minutes as I kind of get everyone on the same page in that regard. First up, here is one of many definitions of citizen science, where citizen science is defined as work undertaken by civic educators and scientists together with citizen communities to advance science, foster a broad scientific mentality, and encourage democratic engagement, which allows people in society to join the debate about complex modern problems. And in the kind of today's session, that debate that we're talking about is around ocean management and the potential kind of for a digital twin of the ocean. And citizen science is a relatively young discipline, but there is an established kind of international and European community around citizen science. And I'll just highlight some aspects quickly here so that if you're new to citizen science or interested in learning more, you can kind of follow up on some of these leads after the session. And the first thing I should mention is the European Citizen Science Association, which is kind of acts as a home for the European citizen science community, and has done a lot to establish and formalize aspects of citizen science, such as by writing the 10 principles of citizen science, which are on my screen at the moment, and which set out kind of core aspects of best practice in citizen science. EXA also runs a biennial conference and hosts several working groups. So if you haven't come across EXA and are interested in citizen science, it's definitely something that's worth exploring. The other main reference now is the EU Citizen Science Project, which hosts a platform which is a repository for projects and resources and training to do with citizen science. So again, if you're interested in learning more about how to run a citizen science project and see examples of other projects, I'd encourage you to visit the EU Citizen Science website. But that's all kind of the general field of citizen science. And that kind of concludes my signposting to those key citizen science resources. But today we're obviously looking at marine citizen science, and we'll see several examples of citizen science projects in the session today, which will hopefully kind of bring the concept to life. The first of which is a project that I'm going to present called Capturing Our Coast, or CoCoast, which was a marine citizen science project that Earthwatch was involved in, and which was coordinated by Newcastle University, and which ran from 2015 to 2018. I should also preface this presentation actually by saying I wasn't actually a part of this project. So I can't take any credit for the wonderful things that were done in it. And I'm here just to really celebrate the work of others and share it with you today. So the project looked at marine biodiversity on UK rocky shores. And the aim was really to involve citizens in collecting data, but more than that, to kind of empower them through that collection of data to inform research and more practically conservation, and also policy if possible. And you can see on the screen now some of the details of the project. The main methods in terms of data collection in the project were transect surveys on rocky shores, where citizens were kind of recruited and trained to survey for 13 specific species on UK shores. And there was also an app developed and a whole range of activities, which I won't go into the full details of today, but there is a project website which I can put in the chat after my presentation if you're interested in learning more about the project. And this image here kind of shows a little about what it looked like in practice. People on the ground, on beaches, kind of carrying out these surveys. And some of the kind of headline statistics about the project below. But what I'll focus on today is actually touching on some of the lessons learned from the project for marine science more generally, rather than specifically what was done in the project. The first thing to note, of course, is that this session is a discussion on marine research more generally and the potential for a digital twin of the ocean. And the CoCoast project only looked at coastal biodiversity. And of course, the coast is a very small part of the overall ocean system. But citizen science relies on volunteers taking part in one way or another, which is why a lot of marine citizen science either focuses on coastal aspects where people live, or targets fishers or boat users who are already kind of traveling in the ocean anyway. It might seem a really obvious point, but it's definitely an important aspect to consider when thinking about how volunteers can be engaged in marine citizen science. The next aspect I just wanted to touch on is collaboration. So in CoCoast, the structure of the project was that this national survey of marine biodiversity was run through kind of parallel activities run by kind of local hubs around the UK coast, which were coordinated nationally, but relied on those kind of local partners working on the ground in those locations. And that collaboration is really important in future projects as well. And I think it's something that going forward, rather than necessarily focusing on the creation of new projects, it can be interesting to support the linking up of existing projects or support other new projects and bring them together in terms of what already exists. And that will be touched on as well in terms of interoperability, in terms of bringing together the data from these existing projects as well. The final aspect I wanted to touch on is the kind of benefits of participation, not only for the researchers themselves, but also very importantly, for the participants. And on the screen at the moment are a list of engagement activities that were run in CoCoast that didn't really have a direct impact on the research themselves, but really enriched the experience for citizen scientists. For example, the wine and science evenings were a little similar to the concept of a science cafe, if you come across that approach, and were a chance for the volunteers and participants to kind of discuss the concepts of the project with the researchers in a slightly more informal context. And I think this is a really important aspect that has to be considered in citizen science, and citizen science in particular, as opposed to crowdsourcing. When we're talking about the concept of a digital twin of the ocean, the focus is often on data and aggregating data. And of course, that's an important aspect. But citizen science isn't just an opportunity to collect or analyze lots of data. It's a chance to empower communities. And this is something that we really have to explore and discover in the future, particularly with reference to what I said earlier about there often being like a physical distance between citizens and the ocean. How do we enable citizens to have a voice and a meaningful role in the management of oceans? So I think that's, the big question that needs to be explored. I'll hand over to the other presenters now. I think there'll be opportunity for questions and discussions later in the session.
I am a marine ecologist from the University of Haifa in Israel, and we've been engaged in the science and study of jellyfish for over a decade now in Dori Edelist's lab. And Professor Edelist started this journey with me almost 12 years ago, and we are still going strong. And this is something to remember about citizen science projects. Longevity is really important because gaining momentum takes time, and finding people to work with And it's really all about the people here. It's the people and the technology, how they mesh together. And I will share my screen now to show you how we did this. How do we connect people to the sea using jellyfish? Our project is called Meduzot Baam, which is a play on words. It's actually a play on words in Hebrew that means jellyfish incorporated, and also jellyfish within the people. So Meduzot Baam started out as us just taking notes of jellyfish that we saw in the water. And really the thing that got us going is that there's a problem there. It all started with an invasive jellyfish. We call it invasive to make that distinction, and building on what Parky described before, we call invasive the new species, the alien species that are actually causing harm. And this species called Ropilema nomadica, or the nomad jellyfish, is actually the only species that in the water that actually impacts all ecosystem services. The main three types of ecosystem services, which is the goods and services that us people we gain from the ocean, is provisioning ecosystem services, which is, for example, food provisioning. And you can see jellyfish clogging the nets of fishermen, and they clog the nets also of the filters of desalination plants and power plants. And what you see up there on the upper right photo is jellyfish in Hadera power plant actually taking the power plant out of service. So that's provisioning. Regulating ecosystem services are the ones where the ecosystem is able to regulate disturbances. And since jellyfish swarm, they can change the ocean, the makeshift of the ocean completely. This species really harms all three types of ecosystem services, from provisioning to regulating to cultural ecosystem services, which are really the most important ones to us, because that's what we understood, that our main challenge was alerting the public, and that's what we set out to do. Now, we'll have you know that this species has gotten here in the 1970s and spread in the 1980s. We already had swarms in Israel. And as for the rest of Europe, well, it's coming, you know. So be prepared. I'm not saying be scared, but be prepared, because it is spreading throughout the Mediterranean right now, Ropilema nomadica, and since 2013 we've had swarms in Tunisia, as far west as Tunisia. So we better learn how to handle this challenge. Our way of handling this was citizen science, really learning about jellyfish. So in order to learn about Ropilema nomadica, we have to understand this creature has a metagenic life cycle, which means it has both a pelagic stage at which the adults swim and swarm, and that's how we get them. That's how we know them best. And also they have a benthic stage at which polyps, tiny polyps on the seabed, which are the direct descendants of these adult creatures, they lie on the seabed, and they are tiny. Really, the polyps are millimeters. So even if you don't see the jellyfish around, and even if we fish all of them out, we still have these polyps that every once in a while spew out new jellyfish into the ocean. So it's a fairly complex challenge. The way we handled it was we created an app, and then we set out to do outreach and empowerment. This empowerment that Simon also mentioned is all important. We had developed gold users, who are people that we have reached and taught how to identify jellyfish and how to perform these surveys. We also acted in transects on the coastline, but mostly these were free, open source observations that were being made through the app. And we needed everyone here. We needed academy and government and municipalities and lifeguards and fishers and utilities. And really, we wanted everyone. We wanted the public in organized groups of people who are already close to the ocean, such as dive, swim, sail, and surf clubs. And we wanted both social media and new media, and conventional media, which was a great way of reaching a large amount of people. The largest national newspaper in Israel and largest national news website actually publishes the jellyfish map in the weather website, and we had millions of people, really literally more than 1 million people every year watching the map in the bathing season, much in thanks to conventional media. We started out by after developing the app, we needed names for the jellyfish. Some of them were new, and some of them didn't have names. So we went with the Israeli Academy of Language in order to give the jellyfish names. And then we put these names on posters, and we shared these posters across the country with the various groups that we mentioned, and with people both online. This happened both online and in actual posters in beaches. We had a jellyfish photography competition. Just like Parky mentioned before, it's a branching thing. Citizen science is not one single traditional science, let's say, methodology by which you follow one clear path. It's a meandering experience. And for us, it was very, very gratifying because like this example, for example, here you see, we went really from preschool all the way through high school. This is an elementary school wall in the school of Rambam in Nahariya, in a city that the kids were not your typical kids that go to the ocean. It's a religious school, and the teachers had stated that they had never been to the sea. And this is a seaborne community, but they lie on the opposite side of the city, and they actually went to sea, some of them for the first time in their lives, in order to quantify jellyfish and to help us with our endeavors. And they studied learned about jellyfish and learned about them. And eventually, the city decided to give them a full marine course and really help them learn about sailing and stuff like this. So we really set out to help people get closer to the sea. And a word about social media, because I mentioned it before, and also Bente, is that social media takes some of the power away from what you do. Everyone that had a citizen science initiative and a parallel Facebook group knows this, that people like to speak about whatever science they are doing. The citizens like to speak about it in social media. And sometimes it takes some of your reporting power away. What we did is basically use this to our advantage. Some of this was a lot of work, but some of this was really, really gratifying. We got additional information that was critical to us for understanding what was out there at sea, because some people just decided they wanted only to connect through social media. And really, we got help with designing the app from citizens, from people who work in high tech that logged into Facebook and decided to help us with understanding what's wrong and what's right with what we do. And mainly, you see this creature on the lower left-hand side. This is a new species of jellyfish that was never seen before. This picture was sent to us by a surfer by a diver using the Facebook group, and it turns out that this is the first time you're looking at the first picture anyone ever took of a new species to science. We did not know this species existed. So this is the first compass jellyfish ever in the Eastern Mediterranean, and also a new species of compass jellyfish that was unheard of by science before that. So chapeau to Drowen and Inbal for really noticing it and reporting this to us. We taught people about the scary stuff about jellyfish that most people know, that they might be lethal. But then we said, hey, no one ever died of jellyfish stings in the Mediterranean. So we don't have these species in Israel. And it's not that the water is 100% safe, but once you learn how to use the website and the map and how to protect yourself, as we mentioned, then you should be okay. Also, it was important for us to say that there are good things that you can say about jellyfish. They provide some ecosystem services, like providing habitat for other animals when they are prey. They are prey for other species of sea turtles and sunfish. Also, of course, they eat other species, so they help sometimes clean the ocean from other pollution, other pollutants, or other species that are blooming. And of course, they might be used. If you look at the bottom right there, this is from Dori et al.'s 2014 publication. You can see that, yes, they can be used in citizen science projects in order to tell people how amazing and wonderful the ocean is. So chapeau to jellyfish. However, we still have this challenge that we need to attend to, of how to deal with their presence. So we looked at one possibility of utilizing jellyfish, and one of these is actually jellyfish as filters of microplastics. We found out that their mucus can efficiently capture nanoparticles, and we use this in wastewater treatment plants in order to coagulate particles that are being spewed by people out into the ocean. So there really are many positive things you can say about jellyfish alongside the negatives. And when you teach the public this, and when citizens realize this, they say, okay, maybe this is not that bad, and maybe we can be a part of the solution. We in the auspices of the Go Jelly project of the Horizon 2020, we also developed a cookbook for more like the Western taste of European citizens for jellyfish, and this was really a great experience for us. If I'm just gonna eventually focus on results here, then we got the map going. You see an online map that has been ongoing for a decade now, and shows the beaches of Israel and where we have jellyfish, where we don't have jellyfish, and if they sting or not. And we had more than 2 million people, different users, individual users, log into the website and watch the map. And about 4,000 of them submitted more than 20,000 observations. So this was really, for us, we have a very, very good spatial and temporal picture of what happened jellyfish-wise in the past decade in Israel. This is the main thing, the map, but we dealt with a whole other bunch of issues, like telling people or really in learning with people how to avoid getting stung and how to treat jellyfish stings in an epidemiological survey. I'll show you what we did later. And really dissemination of knowledge was the main thing we did with the media. And this worked great because every bathing season we had all the media lined up and ready to go to tell everyone what's going on with jellyfish. Because once you have a forecast and you're able to tell people what you expect of the ocean, then people are not scared of it anymore, and then they can plan. And another thing I want to say, really, for every good citizen science program has some longevity to it. Because as you can see, we had more and more people working with us as time grew by, and we're hoping to keep evolving in this sense and maybe growing even to other countries outside of Israel. We always want to have more people, and you can see these gold users, these people that know a lot more about jellyfish and have become empowered to become leaders in their communities as well. We had more and more of them as the project advanced. So for one example of what we did is we were able to get out to publish this forecast, which is actually a hindcast looking at the past decade and when we had jellyfish in the waters. So these swarms, you can see in July, a lot of jellyfish swarms in the height of the bathing season. But then 1 month later, in August, there's almost no jellyfish in the water. So people can plan when they want to spend time on the beach, also according to what we did. So another thing that we've learned is that there are a lot of jellyfish in the winter in the water. But since there are not a lot of bathers in the water and not a lot of people in the water, it was considered less of an issue. But for example, desalination plants and and offshore power plants, for them it still is an issue even in the winter. So we were able to alert these to similar problems to the summer that actually occurred in winter. We looked at the size of these organisms and we noticed that in winter they were much larger. You can see the fraction in blue in the top left-hand corner of these gigantic animals, more than 60 centimeters wide. And really understanding jellyfish in the water has become something that is already considered within our grasp. And not only Opilema nomadica, not only the species that we call invasive, a whole host of other species, some of them stinging, some of them not. Most of them appear with Opilema nomadica in the bathing season in the summer. These are weeks in the x-axis and years in the y-axis again. So most of them appear in the summertime, but some of them, like these ctenophores, for example, appear throughout the year. So we have ctenophores in the water almost year-round, and these do not sting. In the winter, we do have another species that stings called Pelagia, and Pelagia they are thankfully very rare in Israel. So once again, no reason to panic there. And if you want to look at these ctenophores, this is one of the coolest gifts I've ever seen. This is one ctenophore eating another ctenophore, both non-indigenous species new to our waters. And we now have a whole different pelagic realm to deal with than we did before they came here. And these two species got here at 2009 and 2012. So within less than a decade, once again, look at this. We have a lot of ctenophores in the water. And these changes give us a chance to teach people how not all change is bad. Things happen and things change in the water, and they change really quickly right now because of us, because of humans. And we need to get on top of it. And one way of getting on top of it is learning about it and doing the research. The first epidemiological survey that we ran with the National Israeli Poison Center, is something that is expected to have an impact on how we take care of jellyfish stings. And I can let you know, just in on a little secret, vinegar is probably going to be out for our species in the Eastern Mediterranean. We're probably going to use different things, maybe a little more natural stuff like aloe vera, or maybe just, sometimes rinse it with seawater as you get out of the water, and then treat it like a burn, like any other burn, and put anti-burn creams on it. But vinegar is probably not going to do the trick. For sure, you don't rub it in sand or roll around in the sand after you've been stung. Don't rub it, and try not to touch it, and really wash it well. And these are things that are very elementary, may seem very elementary, but need to be scientifically recognized. I'd like to thank my team in Dori Angel's lab, and really thank you guys for listening. I will be taking questions later, and also through chat. So thank you very much.
So hello everybody. I'm Claire Laudy. I'm working as a research engineer in Thales, and I'm specialized in using information coming from people, actually, so citizens, and to get that information and make use of it. So make use of it in order to help other people to make decisions. And that's what I'm going to talk about really briefly. And I'm more in detail going to talk about what we did within the Odyssea project that we also saw on last webinar. So as I said, I'm going to talk to you about what we did in the Odyssea project, and we actually made use or tried to make use of information coming from citizens. So the idea was to use a toolbox that we developed in Thales. This toolbox is about, I said, getting information coming from people. So this is quite a kind of specific information, as it's not coming from physical sensors. It's some kind of richer information, and we try to make use of it in order to help people making decisions. So this toolbox is named InSito, so I'm going to talk a lot about it, just to let you know that the name is the name of the toolbox. And for Odyssea, so we wanted to make use of information coming from citizens, and we had information coming from different sources. We had this application that is Jellyfish, which is an application you can log in, and I think they have a mobile app as well, but I only use the website, and you can log in and get information about jellyfish, actually. And you can also report, as citizen, you can report about jellyfish that you saw. We also made use of social media, and more we focused on Twitter for technical reasons and because it was within the project, but it's just an example of social media we can use. We also used information coming from one of our partners' mobile app. So we directly had the data, access to the data, and also information displayed on the Odyssea platform. So the idea was to get information from all these sources that are mainly coming from citizens, but through different media, and get all this information all together and give a picture of what is going on the Mediterranean Sea or some other places, as you can see on the map. So to do that, we use this toolbox that I told you about, named InSito, and so to manage information coming from citizens, as I said, it's complex information. It's information that embeds some really complex context, because we don't report only physical measurement. We report about a complex situation that has a context, that has we report about several things, entities that are in relation with each other, and so on. So to do that, we represent this information as graphs. And we are tech people, so we are using these graph structures and applying algorithms on them in order to, well, find some interesting things about this information. And InSito Toolbox is really a toolbox that gives really simple building blocks that you can assemble together in order to build smart applications. And we have several functions, let's say, elementary functions that we can combine all together to make these smart applications. We have, I cited 3 of them. The fusion function, which is a function where you know what you are looking for. You're looking for instance, jellyfish on this particular place, and you're going to get information from different sources and see if you can fill this kind of model of what you want. We've got the synthesis function, which is when we want to aggregate and fuse and bring together all the information we have on a subject, so all the events reported from everywhere, and get all that into a big network of information. And once we have this big network of information, we can query it in order to get some specific information. So all these building blocks are made upon a generic algorithms, and we make them applications and domain specific by specifying how we use them, how we call them, we say. And we also have these little boxes, these little blocks that are actually what we call strategies, but these are the places where we give the information about the domain that the experts, so you have and you want to use. Like, for instance, the different species of jellyfish, the places where they can be, or how they behave, and so on. I don't know, because I'm not an expert in jellyfish, but all this information is what is used by the generic algorithm in order to get some smart domain-specific applications. And this is what we did for Odyssea. We combined these different building blocks, and we accessed so 3 sources of information. I said Jellywatch, Twitter, and Espinay was our partner having this mobile app. And we combined all the information into a huge network of information. And then on the map, we displayed the different types of the different events that were reported through the different media, and we could display them well on the map, given their location, of course, but also we could query some specific types of events. So we wanted to know about jellyfish bloom, or we wanted to know about injured animals, and so on. So you can query specific information and get only that subset of information on your map or on other applications. And that's basically what we did for Odyssea. I also have a small video of what we achieved, and I will give it to Bent so she can upload it on the blog post. If it's possible, of course. And you can see all that. Well, it's mainly the same as what I explained here, but it's moving somehow, so maybe it's nicer to see. And this is just the remaining of Odyssea, which is a project that is almost ending now, and in which we had the opportunity to develop this technology. So thank you.
I'm Joan Maso. I work close to Barcelona in the Autonomous University of Barcelona. I'm also an active member of the OGC, where I fulfill my passion of interoperability. And the center where I work is called CREAF. It's an ecological forestry application research, but we do other things like mapping, digital mapping in general. That's why I arrived to the geospatial interoperability activity. So I need to share my screen to talk about this project that is called COSS for Cloud. The objective of the COSS for Cloud is to bring citizens observatories into a thing that the European Commission is building that is based on a cloud idea, of course, that is called the European Open Science Cloud. And 4 of our citizen observatories are biodiversity observatories, so I thought that it could be useful for you to actually see what we are doing. I mean, those are generic biodiversity observatories, so they can be used for terrestrial biodiversity, but also for marine biodiversity. So actually, it happens that the coordinator of the project is actually working on a marine center, also in Barcelona. So they organized things around observations in the sea, and this particular biomarathon was generating many fish observations and marine observations in general, not only fish. And I have selected this nice fish. I believe it's a fish. I'm not an expert in that, but it looks like a fish to me. So it's not a jellyfish, sorry. It's one of the other things that are more solid. And this is the observation and how it looks like in the Natosfera observatory. But actually, one of the good things about biodiversity is the taxonomy. No, the taxonomies that has been created for a long time and are reasonably well agreed among scientists. And those taxonomies are used not just by Natosfera, like you saw before, but for many citizen observatories, and not just citizen observatories, but scientific observatories too, that observe the biodiversity. And that allows for semantic interoperability into the GBIF. And the GBIF is this big biodiversity observatory, this biodiversity network that centralizes lots of biodiversity observations in a one-stop shop. And to allow that, they also use something that is called Darwin Core. And why it matters? It matters because it allows for syntactic interoperability. That means that the Darwin Core standard offers a framework for compiling biodiversity data for a variety and variable sources. Originally developed by the Biodiversity Information Standards community, it plays a fundamental role in data sharing, use and reuse of often biodiversity data, and this accounts for hundreds of millions of species observations that are available using this through GBIF. In practice, they use something that is called the Darwin Core Archive. That's a compact zip file with some structure internally, and this is the way the biodiversity observatories are shared. But those are observations in practice. Doesn't matter if they are biodiversity observations, they could be temperature observations, they could be whatever. Those could be shared using other standards, like generic standards to actually gather observations, like the OGC Sensor Thing API. So one thing that we are trying to analyze is the Sensor Thing API data model and how well it adapts to biodiversity. The Sensor Thing API data model could look scary like a jellyfish, but actually it is not like a jellyfish. It talks about how, it talks about what property is being measured, when that property was measured, what was measured, where it was measured, and all of this is packaged in something that is called a data stream. In order to be useful for citizen science, we have to include the citizen perspective. So we need the citizen in there, that is called party. We need to promote and engage with those citizens in regular basis, for instance, organizing projects and campaigns, as was said before. And we need to take care of the licenses of those observations, because they should be owned by the citizens themselves. And sometimes citizens work together in order to crystallize a single observation. That's what we call group in this model. If we go back to our nice fish here, we see the text of the observation, the species name, the picture that was observed, the license there below the picture. The feature of interest is actually where this observation was done, the citizen that actually contributed this original observation, and another citizen that is below that concurs that the actual species name is correct, the date when it happened, and again the identification and the validation process here in this example. And everything is packed in a group. But from the Sensor Thing API point of view, those are three different observations. On one hand, we have the photo that is done with a particular sensor. On the other hand, we have the taxon identification that is done by a human sensor, actually, and there is another human that is validating the observation too. So another thing that we are trying to do then is to transform those biodiversity observations into Sensor Thing API by testing this approach and see how well it works. And this is just one script that we did to actually take one of biodiversity observation that is stored in iNaturalist and transform it into the three instances of the Sensor Things API, and then afterwards to be able to recover that observation that looks like this in encoding that is called JSON. But finally, you can build a map and present those observations together in a map. But the good thing is that if you are now conformant to the Sensor Thing API, you can mix and match, and you will see the distribution of those species, and maybe you will have temperature sensors that you will see the distribution of the temperature. And if we think about the jellyfish example, maybe we can correlate the temperature of the sea with the actual presence of these particular beasts, or maybe also the salinity of it, whatever sensors you can think and compare the spatial distributions and do studies about that. So this is what I wanted to share with you today, and we aim that we can bring this experience that we are collecting in CoST4 Cloud and moving it to the oceans in these digital twins that Bente presented or anticipated at the beginning. And this is a work that I'm not doing alone. I'm doing this also with Andreas and Henning and some others in CoST4 Cloud.